Hello, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus, presented by The Tab. We are here the morning after New South Wales created rugby league history with the Sky Blues securing their first ever series victory over Queensland in front of some very dedicated home fans at Allianz Stadium. 26-6 the score in torrid conditions, and Phil Gould was there calling all the action on an historic night for New South Wales. Welcome, Gus.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm well. I want to congratulate all the New South Wales fans, well, all the fans generally, who braved the rain at Allianz last night. What a great crowd in terrible, terrible weather.
Certainly was terrible weather, but what a performance by New South Wales, not just last night, but in their first game. Beautifully prepared team, wonderfully selected. These girls over the past few years have developed into great rugby league players, great athletes, and their performances in the first two games have been outstanding. Now, last night in those conditions, by today's standards, we shouldn't be playing football in those conditions. I can't believe that Sydney doesn't have a stadium that can protect the pitch and can also protect the patrons from having to sit in the rain at a major sporting event. Why this city doesn't have a stadium with a roof on it defies logic. I really don't know why it can't happen. Anyway, given the conditions last night, the quality of football that both sides played, but particularly New South Wales, was absolutely bewildering. I mean, they just belied the conditions right throughout the night, and New South Wales were very, very dominant. They got a very bad call early in the game to go down 6-0, but it didn't faze them. They took their time. They worked their way back into the contest, and then from the time Samaima Taufa barged over in the 18th minute, it was all one-way traffic from there, and it was a resounding victory. The first time New South Wales has won a multi-game Origin series.
Correct.
And they'll go to Game 3 in Newcastle. Now Queenslander won't want to be beaten 3-0, but it'll be a feather in their cap, the Blues girls, if they can wrap up the series with a whitewash.
Your favourite got a try last night, Samaima Taufa.
Yes, she set the victory in motion. She's a beauty. She's been my favourite player right from the start. What a gutsy girl.
She revelled in the conditions. That New South Wales pack for the two games have been phenomenal, haven't they? They've just rolled over the top.
They all have. They really all have. You know, it can be very difficult when you play in conditions like that, you know, with a waterlogged field and ball movement and running and stepping is really hard, and you get 6-0 behind early. It can play on your mind, and it did for New South Wales for a little while there, because when you're in front on the scoreboard, you can really command the game from in front. And New South Wales worked hard not to let the scoreboard get into their heads. From the time Samaima Taufa barged through and scored the try, you could see them visibly settle down. They really settled down into their rhythm. Olivia Koenig was outstanding.
Oh, how good a play is she?
Her game was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And, she scored a couple of tries herself, but there was plenty of ball movement too, and from then, they just dictated to Queensland. Queensland, they were never in it. They were never really in it.
Wonder what that means for their selection for Game 3. They've had, well, Tamika Upton's a star, and obviously Aiken.
She
and
hurt herself last night.
Yeah,
she hurt herself.
I'm wondering whether there might be a changing of the guard on the way for Queensland, but we'll wait and see. But New South Wales, well done to you. And again, congratulations to all the fans who were there. And you've often talked about the different demographic that women's rugby league attracts. Sitting at home watching last night, it was wonderful to see the number of young girls there, and they all had signs. Kezi Apps is my hero. I saw it at one stage.
Well,
it's just a completely different generation.
I can't believe any of them have got voices today.
Well, they may not.
They screamed from the opening minute to the final siren. I mean, on every play, they just scream. They were really into the contest. It was good fun. And, walking back to the car park, I had to go down to the eastern quarter there to get to the car park. And we're walking through the puddles and the rain, and people are out in the streets, and they're all drenched. They're all absolutely drenched, and they're still on a high from the football that they'd seen. A lot of young women there. They get inspired by the professional athletes, and that's what it's all about. It's about inspiring young women in Australia. Young women in Australia need role models, be it in sport, be it in business, be it in politics, be it in media, or whatever it is. And we've got so many talented women in our country these days that the future looks bright.
How many of the Blues or even Queensland Origin stars will line up for the Bulldogs this year? Have you got any of the big guns?
No, we're going to develop our own, mate.
Start from the ground up. Yeah. That's your mantra.
Yeah.
If you've had a day of school, any of the young girls that listen to our podcast and you need a note, Uncle Gus is happy to provide one.
Yeah.
I've got a cold or my voice is hoarse. I was at the footy last night and I had permission to have the day off.
Yeah, there was such a buzz about the crowd, walking to the ground after the game. But during the contest, their engagement is incredible. So
good on them.
They love it.
Indeed. The Blues looking to go 3-0 up and clean sweep the series in Newcastle in a couple of weeks' time.
Dear oh, dear oh.
The Bulldogs fans are going to take over Vegas next year.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, we're off to Vegas. Very exciting for all our fans.
You can lead a tour group.
Well, we're going to have a couple of tour groups. We're going to, it'll all be coming out very, very shortly.
Is Paul Langmack going to lead one?
We've already done, he'll be on a plane somewhere. We've already done heaps of surveys amongst our membership base and fan base about who would go and what style of accommodation or flights or whatever they want. We want to be able to accommodate everyone at every budget and get them across there. I think it's wonderful for the club. I think it's wonderful for every club that they can get across and play in that stadium on that platform and on that weekend. And, this is the third year and the NRL getting better at it. I think that from what we witnessed last year, by going over there firsthand and getting a look at it, it's going to help us enormously. But talking to the people that were there year one, they saw massive improvements to year two, and I think they learned a lot, and there'll be big improvements again for year three. And we've already done a lot of work on our schedule, itinerary, where we'd like to stay, what we'd like to do, and how many people we'd like to take, and what sort of events we're going to run there. So we're going to certainly give our part of the entertainment a Bulldog flavour, that's for sure. And I think we'll attract a lot of fans across there.
So it was confirmed this week that Canterbury and St George Illawarra are going to open the season. That's a great way to start the 2026 Premiership. And then the Cowboys will play Newcastle, and then Hull Kingston Rovers will play Leeds. There won't be a women's game on the schedule for next year, but Bulldog Dragon to open the season. Fantastic.
Yeah, it will be.
Decades-old rivalry.
We were actually in Vegas with St George officials when we went across there earlier this year, and we had a discussion with Peter Volandis at that time. And, the two clubs have had a discussion. They're two great clubs with great supporter bases, and we think we can put on a really good show there. So it was a joint effort, and there'll be more news on that to come down the track. But both the Dragons and the Bulldogs have worked closely to make this happen for this year.
Very good. The Bulldogs fans like having a good time, and they'll lap it up in Vegas.
Well, in Vegas will know who the Bulldogs are.
They might even step it up a notch.
By the time we leave, Vegas will know who the Bulldogs are. They might not know yet, but
who the bloody hell are those guys?
No, it's
very good.
It's fascinating. I mean, the trip, I went there this year and had a good look at it and can see the potential of it. And it's just wonderful. I mean, so far as the season opening, the Vegas weekend is enormous back here. It's going to take a long time to have the desired impact across there. Although in Vegas, you get around to the people that are working in the hotels and the restaurants and that, they kind of know what it is now and where people come from. And around the streets of Vegas, it was amazing just how many Australians you ran into, expat Australians who were living in the United States, people that came from all around the world, but showing their jerseys. The colours on the street were terrific. Warriors had an enormous following over there this year. And I think the Dragon and the Bulldog, who are two of our biggest clubs here in Australia, will have a huge following across there. And, of course, a couple of big English clubs coming across again. Hull KR and Leeds will be playing there. And Newcastle and the Cowboys will be across there as well. So it gives us a Queensland favour for it. Newcastle, one of our great clubs, and the two big Sydney clubs, and Dragon v Bulldog, should be a beauty.
Can you talk to the bosses at work and please have us go over to call the game? Because I've called the last two, but from the studio.
It's a bit above my pay grade.
No, it's not. Nothing's above your pay grade. Can you I want to go and call at that stadium. I want to go to Allegiant Stadium.
Phenomenal stadium. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal stadium. Yeah, it'll be a great experience. I'm glad that we're in a position that we can do it. When it first came out, the Bulldogs were struggling for a long time, and we were struggling, and I just said, well, I don't really want to go until we can go and give a good showing of ourselves, and I think we can now. And it'll be a great contest against the Dragons. They're a good side, but I think we're ready to go, and our fan base is ready to go, and we want to give them that experience as part of our club. And win, lose or draw, it'll be a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. You might be the defending premiers by the time you get to Vegas. On his day, Latrell's the best big game player in our sport.
No.
I wouldn't say he's the best big game player. I would say he's the best big moment player.
That's probably a more accurate question.
Yeah, he's the big moment player. Look, we've seen Latrell for years coming through. I don't know if I've told you this story, but back in the junior rep days, when I was at Panthers, we had a pretty good under-18s team and in SG ball. And that was fellas like Cleary and Luai and Fisher Harris and Corey Harawira-Naira and players of that ilk. And we played in the grand final against the Roosters, who had Latrell Mitchells and Joey Manus and Butchers and those sort of kids.
Good game.
I think there was about 20 NRL players came out of that under-18s grand final that have gone on to be long.
Wow.
And, yeah, it was a really special year. But the game itself, I can't remember the exact scores or how it happened. I'm getting a little bit old. But what I do know is Latrell Mitchell did this, okay? So I think the Panthers were leading, let's call it 18-12 with a minute left to play. Mm-hmm. Latrell Mitchell gets the ball, beats 7 blokes and scores in the corner, kicks the goal, 18-all. We go to Golden Point. And I remember in Golden Point, Nathan Cleary had a shot for field goal that hit the upright and the ball came down. And I think 2 tackles later, they throw the ball to Latrell, who beats 9 blokes and scores in the corner and wins in Golden Point. So he's been doing it his whole career.
Was he playing in the Senate?
He would have been, yeah. He would have been. Look, that's probably not the exact details, but that's how I remember it. And he scored a try to get him into Golden Point, and then he scored the winning try shortly in Golden Point extra time. And they were 2 really good SG ball teams, probably the cream of the crop, the best I've seen in some time. And
that seems like a lot. Like, would you see a crop of that many go through to play NRL?
Not every year. No, certainly.
20?
Yeah,
20
there had to be. Yeah, there would have been. Yeah. I remember Peter O'Sullivan was the recruitment officer for the Roosters at the time, and we played them at Windsor during the rounds back out in the thing. And I think we had a 14-all draw then, and he came to me and said, a lot of NRL players in that game. He said, they're 2 really good sides, and they were. They produced a lot of future NRL talent.
So Latrell was a gun even as a kid. Like everyone knew.
Yeah. Well, Peter O'Sullivan tells a story about how he recruited him. He had a mate who had a young boy who he wanted Peter O'Sullivan to come and watch, a little hooker. And so he went along to watch his mate's son play. Mm-hmm. And he said, and the 2 teams went out and were doing a little bit of a warm-up. And he said, and I couldn't take my eyes off this kid in the team that he was playing against, and it was Latrell. So he went there to watch his mate's son, and he came home with
Latrell Mitchell.
With Latrell Mitchell.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, Latrell the other night, I mean, it was incredible. And I jokingly I say, of the 80 minutes, he spent 70 minutes conserving energy, which he does. He plays the game at his own pace, in his own way, and virtually does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. If he's called upon to do extra, he'll do it. But if he doesn't have to, he doesn't. And then, the try saves, the big moments, the big runs, winning penalties. He's got referees bluffed. He wins penalties. And then the field goal was just arrogance. Like, they were probably closer the previous 2 times they finished their set of 6, but he just put the ball up high in the air, from about 40 metres out, put it up high in the air. And I thought, as we get closer to full time, he's going to have to take a shot shortly. And you could just see when they got to tackle 5 there, he caught the ball in his own half. He took 2 steps to go 1 metre into the opposition half. And when they kick for field goal in those sort of moments, I watched the kicker because you get a fair idea of how the ball's going to go. As soon as it came off the boot, it was like a golf shot. You could just see the trajectory was fine. He had the distance and he had the height.
Yeah, it went over the dead ball line.
Yeah, I had a look back at him, and he just turned his back and started walking back. Like walking back.
Yeah.
It was like like those cricketers who hit a 6. As soon as they hit the ball, they start patting down the wicket. Like that ball's gone. And he absolutely nailed it. But his try save was monumental.
How good was that? I loved your comparison, like with the National Geographic Channel. It did look like a lion coming after a
poor old Bambi got caught.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal talent. A phenomenal talent.
Were you calling the game with me in Melbourne that night? He's playing for the Roosters, wasn't he? When he kicked that field, he was like 5 in from touch. and outside the 40.
Yeah, and it was still rising when it got to the post.
It was unbelievable.
That was Golden Point too.
That was Golden Point.
The ball nearly ended up in the MCG.
He kicked it out of Melbourne.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
A big kick. When his goal kicking is extraordinary. I mean, when he nails the ball, it's the best strike on a goal kick I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's a talent. There's no risk. He's a talent.
Pardon me.
He plays at his own pace. He does what he wants to do when he wants to do it.
That being said, we'll talk about it in a minute. When he's played Origin, he stepped it up. Like his intensity steps up.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
Origins.
Well, I'd think back to Game 2 at Melbourne last year. Like he was in everything.
He was
And
good.
he was barnstorming.
They were feeding him the ball, yeah.
Daly Cherry Evans could beat the Roosters before the end of the year.
No. Why?
Oh, there's whispers. Scuttlebutt.
Oh, scuttlebutt. No.
Are you surprised?
Why would Manly give up on their season now? I can't see that happening.
Well, I suppose the train of thought is that if they can't win a premiership at Manly, they've got these young halfbacks, particularly Joey Walsh, who's been named in their extended squad this week, and he might be called upon when DC is playing for Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's an opportunity to get them some game time.
Mm-hmm.
They've signed Jamal Fogarty though, but maybe if they feel they can't win the premiership, then maybe if they move him on, it gives the club an opportunity to blood some of the younger ones.
Well, at what point do they give up? They're not going to give up on their season. I think it's ridiculous talk. I can't see that happening. I really don't see that happening. I can't imagine the club would give up on its season at this stage, at any stage really. So no.
Won't be happening.
Well, I don't think so. I still don't get the Cherry Evans Roosters thing.
No, I understand that.
I don't get it at all. But I don't know why you would let him go mid-season. I mean, they've got a commitment for this year. They've got to have their best finishing position.
Is it true Sandon Smith's talking to other clubs now?
No idea. I doubt it. I don't know.
Well, he's knocked back their initial offer. That's at the Roosters.
Who said that?
Well, that Danny said that on 100% Footy on Monday night.
Did he?
So there's been an offer there for a while, which Sandon Smith has knocked back.
Is that during scuttlebutt, was it?
Yeah, but Danny's scuttlebutt's usually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we'll see what pans out there. Should New South Wales be worried about picking 5 players potentially from a team coming 16th?
No. No, you don't lose your ability. I know the Panthers are sort of struggling at the moment, but individually I think those players are genuine Origin class players, and New South Wales need them. I wouldn't hesitate in picking them at all. Thinking back in the day, I can remember myself picking players out of teams, individuals out of teams that were well down the ladder. They were struggling at club level, and they actually relished the opportunity to come into Origin and play in some winning teams and get away from it a little bit. And it could well turn the Panthers' season around to get those juices flowing again and get them into Origin and have a bit of success there and then take that form back to their club. But no, the players you're talking about there, I mean, Edwards, Toll, Cleary, Martin, Yeo, they're amongst the best in their position anywhere in the game.
So I twisted your arm on the forward pack last week. I'm going to do the same with the back line. You kind of gave most of it away last week. Back line locks. Crichton, To'o, Cleary, Mitchell.
Looks all right.
Does that agree? Do you agree with that?
What's that? Blacktown, backline locks. Oh, locks.
Lock them in.
Lock them in. Yeah, I would include Edwards in that.
Well, I had him as likely, but yes, I think it's shaping up that he'll be there.
Yep.
So to be determined, there's really only 2, isn't there? Moses v. Luai. I'm reading between the lines only on what Laurie's had to say over the last week or so, and I think it's going to be Moses.
It appears he's leaning that way, doesn't it? You can sort of hear in his voice he's leaning that way. And I don't think the Tigers' performance last week in Melbourne has helped Jerome's cause.
No.
Having said that, and I've obviously got a loyalty to Nathan and Jerome because of the Panthers connection, but that's going to be hard. And not only that, their connection to other important players in the team like Yeo and Dylan Edwards and those players.
Don't forget Luai was phenomenal last series. But he was tremendous.
He and Moses were terrific.
Fantastic.
Together. I mean, that was an epic game 3. And, and there's, if you want to talk about incumbency meaning anything, they're the incumbent ones. They've come from a winning series. But, it's hard to deny Nathan Cleary, the number 7 jersey for New South Wales, particularly on his own individual form this year. He's had some phenomenal games in losing teams and winning teams. I think he's probably going to lean Moses' way.
And you've talked about picking players to fulfil the role that they do at club level. It's obviously a different role for Moses, but if you think about it a bit more deeply, like he's a dynamic runner, Mitch Moses. Like he's fast, explosive. And Jonathan Thurston played a similar role with Queensland a lot. Played halfback for his club and played 5'8" for Queensland.
Yeah, well, he and Cronk both played in the halves. They played 7 for their clubs, but they played in the halves at origin level. That's why I wanted Mitchell Moses on 100% footy the other night. I thought it was a great topic to get his feed on how he felt about playing with Cleary. Now, for my mind, it's either Moses Luai or Cleary Luai. I think Luai's the 6 and the other 2 are the 7s. That makes sense to me. But because of the discussions around potentially Cleary and Moses, I wanted to get Mitchell in and talk to him about, well, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about moving across the other side of the field, giving away control of the team, not being the major kicker in the side? If he had to kick, he's got to kick down the left-hand side of the field, which is not easy for a right-foot kicker with the pressure that you get from the inside on your kicking leg. But he actually said that he grew up playing in that sort of role. He would relish the opportunity to play with a game manager like Nathan Cleary, taking away a lot of the responsibility for the game management part of the game, which the halfback usually provides, and then just instinctively following the play around and injecting himself anywhere. Now, just because he plays 6 doesn't mean, and I would certainly hope it doesn't mean, he just confines himself to the left-hand corridor as they do in club football these days. I hate that, and I love halves playing together, and I like them to see all parts of the field. And I think Mitchell Moses has got the work ethic and the constitution to do that. Plus, he's very dangerous anywhere on the field, and if he can follow Cleary around or follow even a Sire Yeo around, they can come up with some really nice structures there and some really nice shapes to run some plenty of attack at North Queensland. The other part of it too is, and we made the point that in last year's Game 3 Origin Decider, we had 4 of the best playmakers in the game, in that particular game, like Cherry Evans and Munster and Moses and Luai. They're all great.
Dearden was 5'8".
They're all great playmakers in their own right, but no one could create a try, not out of a pass or a kick. And it was 4-2 at halftime. No one looked like scoring a try. The 2 tries came because Luai ran the ball, made a break and got Bradman Best away. And then the game breaker was Mitchell Moses, who ran the ball and scored an individual try. And I asked him about the importance of running the ball in big games. If you go back to last year's grand final, Melbourne versus Panthers, similar sort of quality contest, but the halves in both sides ran for record numbers because the opportunities to pass and play make and score tries from kicks just weren't there. So I think running the ball in big games is extremely important. And of the 3 of them, he's probably potentially the most dangerous ball runner.
Oh, he's lightning.
Yeah, he's the most dangerous ball runner. So, look, I can't knock it if they do. Well, I won't knock it if they do. My preference would be particularly game 1, which is usually a bit tight and a bit close, and that I would go with the tried and tested in Cleary and Luai. I'd have no problem with him going with Cleary and Moses. It looks as though Cleary's the lock. If they turned around and said, we'll go with the winning formula from last year in Moses and Luai, you know what? I'd have no problem with that either. You could justify that as well. So they're 3 very, very talented players, and whatever combination he comes up with, I think New South Wales will be winning anyway.
Well, Laurie was a great running 5'8" himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knows a thing or two about how to attack on that side of the ground.
Well, you have to in those big games. And I've said to you, like the Melbourne Storm, who are the premiership favourites at the moment, they play with a hooker and 3 fullbacks. Who are all great ball runners. Pappenhausen, Jerome Hughes and Munster are all great ball runners. That's the feature of their game. They run the ball. Their playmaking is not their feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not their strong point. They can do it, and they do it well, but their ball running is what makes them the most dangerous. And I think when you're looking for playmakers in your club, or people talking about the type of playmakers that you want, their ability to run the ball is their biggest play.
So to the last point of conjecture, Zach Lomax returns this week, and talk about phenomenal last series. In his maiden Origin outing, he was close enough to New South Wales' best player. So it seems like it's a showdown between he and Turbo to play on the wing. Now, I love Tom Trbojevic. I love him. And I think I've said here, I've put to you that maybe he's the best player in the game, attacking-wise, when he's fit. He's not fit. I called him on Sunday, and he's nowhere near fit.
No.
He's not the same player than he has been.
And I think the performance on the weekend rocked the coach a little bit. I think the coach had him sort of penciled in to play on the wing, which I disagree with. I don't think Tom should be playing on the wing. People say he's a great player, he can play anywhere. Yeah, but wing's a big position, particularly at that level. And if you're not doing it week in, week out, I'd rather go with a specialist, to be honest, someone that's doing it week in, week out. And they've certainly got specialist options available to them. You know, like the Pappenhausens and the Tedescos and the Trbojeviches have all got the capability to play Origin football at fullback. You just got to pick one. Unfortunately, the other three miss out because they don't cover much else. But I think Tom's physical appearance on the weekend rocked the coach. You know, I think Tom would have to do something extraordinary this week to give the coach confidence to go down that line. I've got no doubt Laurie Daly probably had him penciled in as one of the wingers, particularly without the availability of Lomax, who's been out injured for some time. Now, Lomax is going to play this weekend, is he?
Yeah.
So, if provided he proves his fitness, well, he'll come into recollection. I know that Jacob Kiraz is amongst the list there. He's on the list, and he's going particularly well. Again, the other part is Brian To'o, who's had a long layoff, and he had one game back last week, looked a little rusty. He'll probably be looking for a performance this week just to give the coach confidence to put him in. But if he's right, well, he's like another front rower in your team.
Well, he won't be performing this week because they got the bye.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Well, that's no good. All right.
That's the other variable, I suppose. But, I mean, To'o's been brilliant in Origin. I mean, they can't, there's no question. There's no question about his fitness.
Statistically, one of the greatest wingers of all time. I mean, his body of work is amazing. His constitution for work and the metres that he makes and what he does for his team. And he's part of a 4-time premiership winning team out there at the Panthers, and his Origin performances have always been terrific. So fitting well, he's right. He was just a little bit rusty last week, and he's had some fair time off this year. But you trust his ability to get him right. I love Turbo. Don't get me wrong. I love Turbo.
Everyone loves Turbo.
I think it would be an absolute tragedy if he goes through his whole career and doesn't play fullback for New South Wales at some time. I hope that opportunity comes one day and that he does get to wear the number 1 because he would be deserving. But I do think he probably needs to restore some confidence in the coach that he's physically ready for that sort of role, because on the weekend he obviously wasn't at his best.
He doesn't have the zip. He doesn't have the zip that he normally does.
Yeah.
Which is sad to watch.
Yeah, well,
I just hope he gets right. My worry is now, he's not an old man.
He's courageous.
Absolutely.
He's obviously playing for his club, and he's playing under difficulty, and he's got himself back early because they need him. And they got themselves in a winning position the other day and couldn't go on with it. The Sharks finished a bit the stronger, but he personally, it wasn't Tom. It wasn't the Tom that we know. Now, he might come out and blitz it this week, a week under his belt and another week of physiotherapy and working on himself and a bit of confidence. He could come out and blitz it and the coach could pick him. You just don't know. And we don't know what's going to happen this week. There could be injuries, suspensions, all sorts of things happen until you get to the medical and everyone's available. Tom Trbojevic is an Origin class player. I don't particularly like playing blokes out of position, but I understand that we do it from time to time. I think if Lomax proves his fitness, he'll probably get the nod.
So you're saying Lomax and or the incumbents will most likely, if the circumstances are the same as they are right now, you'd imagine you think they'll be in, or that's who you'd pick?
Well, you could justify that.
Yeah.
You could I think that's probably the way they'll go. I think it's a big weekend for Zach Lomax, big weekend for Trbojevic.
Carraz looks like he'd be bomb-proof at Origin.
He's a big physical thing. He's a big, strong boy. I believe he'll play Origin at some stage of his career. He's he's still young and he's got his best football in front of him. And another one that I really like is Campbell Graham. I think Campbell Graham is Origin class. I really do. Wing or centre. Campbell Graham covers a lot of options, left and right side of the field, but he's a terrific defender. He's a strong kid. I love them big, tall, long-levered sort of outside backs. And, he's another one. He's been dogged by injury the last 18 months, but, if they found themselves short on troops, I wouldn't hesitate to throw him in. I get the same feel about him I got about Zach Lomax several years ago. I kept saying to people, pick Zach Lomax in Origin. He's made for it. I think you've got the short list right there. It'll be interesting to see what comes through the weekend and who comes through unscathed. And those Panthers blokes, as you say, have got the bye this weekend, so they're just getting themselves into Origin mode. And I'd be picking them, the ones you named.
So I know you don't give two hoots about the Queensland team, but I've thrown together what will be close to their team. Obviously, there's scope for a few changes, but this will be the guts of it, which is pretty straightforward. Ponga, Coates, Holmes, Hammer, Talangi, Munster, Cherry Evans. Carrigan, Grant, Tino, Gilbert, Nane, Cotter. Dearden, Horsburgh, Collins, Hopgood. Good side.
Yeah, it's a good side. Typical sort of Queensland side. Hard-working forward pack, no nonsense. Creative halves, creative fullback, and great athleticism and speed out on the edges. Coates, Holmes, Hamaso, and Talangi. They're great finishers.
What about the spine? Ponga, Munster, Cherry Evans and Grant.
Well, it doesn't come much better than that, does it? No, they'll be hard to beat.
Suncorp first up too, Gus.
You need to get it right to beat. You always need to get it right to beat Queensland. I think if New South Wales get it right, they'll beat Queensland, but they're going to need to do it, and that's why I think you eliminate as many risk factors as possible by not playing too many players out of position or out of form in your Origin team. You need to show Queensland the respect by picking the absolute best available in each position. That's my only kind of recommendation there. That's a formidable Queensland team. It's a typical looking Origin team, and they'll be very, very hard to beat.
So the teams will be...
So where's the first one? In Sydney?
No, it's at Suncorp.
Suncorp, is it?
I can't imagine a New South Wales team has won 2 games in a row at Suncorp before. Won the decider last year, and they open up the series at Suncorp this time. Then we go to Perth, where Queensland have a deplorable record. And then we finish in Sydney.
They've got a deplorable record in Perth, but I think they've been one up in the series a number of times that we've gone to Perth.
Yes, certainly last time they were.
Yeah. They've actually got a poor record in game 2 when they win game 1. Well, it's less than average anyway.
But they've been flogged in Perth.
Well,
flogged.
It's going to be important to them this year because they'll need to win one of the first 2 games. The decider's in Sydney. So really for them, they need to nail Suncorp and get it right, and then they need to go and win in Perth. I'm not sure that they're going to look forward to coming to Sydney for a decider to try and wrap it up.
Do you remember in the early days, Queensland could not win in Sydney forever, or particularly at a core? But I think that record has flipped. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I think it's flipped dramatically. I think their record there in recent years is actually really good. We'll see.
There's lots of ups and downs in Origin.
Funny game. Funny game.
Funny game, rugby league.
So the teams they picked this weekend. I think New South Wales, I don't know. They were because there's a late game Sunday, isn't there, because of Women's Origin, so they're talking about maybe naming it Monday. But the players will be going into camp anyway. Now, Mal Meninga wants to coach the Perth Bears, Gus. He's 64 years old and he wants to get back into club coaching.
Yeah, God love him.
I thought coaching the Kangaroos would be a cushy little gig.
God love him. What happens to the Australian job if he goes and coaches at club level?
Might be available.
I might have to find a new Australian
You would be
coach.
very, very good in the Australian job.
No.
Come on. That'd be perfect for you.
No, mate.
You do half a dozen games a year? Not even that.
No.
That'd be fun.
My coaching days are over.
So, do you know what? Look, Brad Arthur was the P for this gig for weeks. But the more you think about it, if you're trying to get a foothold in Perth,
Yeah, I think there was a lot of media. He may well end up with the job, and he may be interviewed for it. But I think
I think the interviews were yesterday.
I think when they were reporting it some weeks ago, it was just speculation, simply because he's an NRL coach. He's not coaching in the NRL at the moment. He's over there in Leeds. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
If you're looking to get a foothold, there's few better people you could get than Mal Meninga as the face of your club. But even taking a broader look, a Meninga Arthur double act would be great for Perth. You could have Mal in some, senior director of football sort of role, and Brad doing the day-to-day coaching.
Yeah, they're going to have to set their club up properly. I said they announced a new CEO this week.
Yes.
He comes from a media background or something.
Is it the Seven Network?
Yeah, so he comes from a media background. So that was a quick selection and an interesting one. They got a lot of hard work to do. It won't be easy to set up the way they are. I mean, if you remember back in the early days when they bought the Redcliffe Dolphins in, they were struggling to buy marquee talent, and they had Wayne Bennett and they had living in Queensland as selling points, and they were still early on. There was a concern about their recruitment drive. They did very well in the end, but there's got to be a number of factors on the list to entice people to go to Western Australia.
I could live in Perth, couldn't you?
It's a beautiful city. I love Perth. Yeah,
great golf courses.
I'm a Sydney boy, mate.
Great beaches, great golf courses.
I'm a very simple person, mate. I live in Sydney.
Are you?
I grew up in Sydney. I love Sydney. I have my holidays at the Gold Coast, which I've done for 40 years, and I don't actually diverse too much from that. I live a very boring existence.
That's not what you read.
But I'm very happy about it.
That's not what you read.
They can write what they like.
Have you really been going to the Gold Coast for 40 years for holidays?
40 years.
Do you stay in the same place?
Yep.
Do you?
Yep.
Has it been renovated since you first started going there?
A few times. Had a few owners too. It's now owned by the Laundy family, actually. Laundy Hotels bought it. So I go to the Sheraton Mirage at the Gold Coast.
Ah, yes.
I went there in the 1980s. And it was, I think the Sheraton Mirage from memory was built by Christopher Skays back in the halcyon days.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful complex.
I remember it was the bee's knees
It
back
would have
in the
been
day.
before its time back then. And it was very expensive. And I'd actually gone there as a guest of another family. And I thought to myself, I wonder if one day I could ever afford to come here for a holiday. I mean, it was like lifestyles of the rich and famous. I thought I'd never seen anything like it. Like it was just before its time back then, So I made a commitment myself that every year I would get there by hook or by crook. And plenty of times I went there and I had no money. I mean, I had to live off my wits to afford it. And, I'd be maxing out credit cards and everything to do it. And then eventually, got married and had a family, and we took all our family holidays up there, and the kids loved it. And it's a beautiful setup.
They got a big pool, big resort pool.
Big resort pool. It's really easy. It's just a little bit away. It's away from the madness of the strip there at the Gold Coast. Which when you're younger you want to be involved. As you get older, you don't. And it's virtually a walk across to the beach. It's got its own patrol beach right out the front. So it's amazing. Yeah, it's a really nice part of the Gold Coast, and they treat you very well up there. And recently, the Laundy Hotels family they bought it. So
right, well, you might get mates rates this time.
No,
in fact, you may not even have to pay at all.
No, but they look after me very well when I go there. It's always most appreciative. It's a great place to stay. I love staying there. I've recommended it to a lot of people over the years, and they've gone there and always had a good time. And I go back there every year. So during a lot of it revolved around when I was going there. It would revolve around the Magic Millions and the Magic Million sales. And I like my horse racing, and I love the golf courses up there. And
they're great golf
when
courses.
The kids were young, you do Movie World and Dream World, and
SeaWorld. It's right near SeaWorld.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, I used to do Pub World and Tab World and Golf World. The family, you take the kids and that, and we get I'd get up at 6. I'd go and train. I'd go to the gym. I'd come back. I'd have a swim. Then I'd go to the golf range and I'd hit a couple of buckets of balls, play a few holes. I'd come back by 10 a.m. and the kids were just waking up, getting ready. So I'd had my day, and then I'd just go and lay around the pool for the rest of the day and take the kids to the beach, and then we'd head off to one of the theme parks in the afternoon. They were great days, great memories. Love the Gold Coast.
What,
and I
so-
live in Sydney. I don't particularly want to
So
live
they
anywhere
don't,
else.
the kids don't come with you anymore?
Eh?
The kids don't come with you anymore?
No, they've grown up. They don't want to be going.
I'd
on
still be
holidays with
going.
me.
I'd be going if you were paying.
My daughter's just got back from Bali. She's going on a 3-month tour overseas, and they have their own holidays these days.
Ask Gus. Thanks to the Tab, the NRL season is in full flow at the moment. And for the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we are on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Taylor Arnold asks Gus, if you're in charge of the Tigers, what would you say after last week?
Been there. That was out of. I didn't see that coming at all. In fact, last week I think I tipped the Tigers. Could you?
Well, you gave them a good push.
I said Melbourne will probably win, but I thought the Tigers had a real good chance of upsetting them down there, and they just gave nothing, absolutely gave nothing at any stage. Melbourne Storm were outstanding, but the Tigers were absolutely terrible. And the most worrying part about it is like the Tigers were nearly at full strength. And I mean, a couple of years ago, we suffered a loss like that with the Bulldogs, but if you go back and look at that Bulldogs team, it had so many rookies in it, and so many, there were so many injuries and so many people unavailable, and it was nowhere near even the best team that they could put on the field in those days. And they lost 66-0. But we bounced back and won the next week. We came back the next week and beat South Sydney. You can shrug it off and get on with your job and do it again. And it all just depends about your attitude and your start. But they need to sit down and work out, firstly, go through their preparation, be honest about what was happening on the field, what the communication and what the thinking was like and what you were feeling during those moments, and then get about preparing for this week's game and getting the start right. And you can only play this game one play at a time. I keep saying to people, every play, every minute, full 80 minutes. It's the only way you can play it. You can only play it one play at a time. So they've got to get out and they've got to win the first play this week, and then they've got to win the second play, and then they've got to keep competing on every play until that siren goes, and then they look up at the scoreboard. But it was a terrible, terrible performance. There's no getting away from that. First thing is to admit it, review everything about the whole week and why it happened, and then be honest, sit down face to face and say, what were you thinking in this moment, and what were you thinking, and what were you saying, and what happens in periods like that, teams get very isolated. They stop communicating. They stop working together as a team. It's sort of like every man for himself, and then the only voice you're hearing is the voice in your head, and sometimes that voice doesn't help you very much at all. So there's a lot of mental work that's got to go into the recovery from that and the preparation for this week, but they're professional footballers. We've seen them get it right so many times. It's not as though they've lost their ability. But for some reason, on that day, everyone turned up and was nowhere near ready to give their best. There was not probably one redeeming performance in the whole team. Even in badly beaten teams, sometimes you'll see players that really gave their all, but there wasn't much about that game that any of the players could be proud of. Melbourne Storm are a great side, and we've seen them do that to a few teams this year.
I was just going to say
in a half of football.
More than any other team, particularly at home, when they get in that group, they can just blow teams away.
Well, they led Parramatta by 40-odd at halftime. They led the Warriors by 34 at 36 at halftime. Like they've done it to a few teams, but they haven't done it two halves back to back. They'd actually lost the second halves of all those games. So, what was it, 34-0 at halftime? I was sort of thinking, all right, well, now we'll see what the Tigers are made of. It was 30-0 in the second half. And I didn't think Melbourne were anywhere as near as threatening in the second half as they were in the first half. It was just that the Tigers didn't give a yelp. It was a very, very disappointing performance. And as I said earlier on, I don't think it helped Jerome Luai's cause, to be honest. You can't hide from what you've shown. And, that could just be enough to sway the coach into Mitchell Moses. But for the Tigers, all those players have got to be forgetting about representative football, forgetting about their own. They've got to reconnect as a team and play as a team this week and put out a good performance for their fans. You can bounce back from it, though. We've got Bulldogs, we got beat 66-0 2 years ago. As I say, it was a very, very understrength and very young and very inexperienced team that got belted that day. But we bounced back 7 days later and beat South Sydney. So it can happen in the space of a week. There is history is littered with with results where teams get beaten by 50 or 60 and bounce back and win the next week. That's why this is a funny game.
Funny game. The Tigers play the Dolphins on Sunday at Campbelltown. We're going to preview round 11 very soon. I just checked your rundown to see whether the answer to this trivia question is on it, because it's a good one. Jordan's actually he's put together a good question this week.
Okay.
Ryan Pappenhausen scored the most points in a game for Melbourne last weekend with 36.
Mm-hmm.
Who previously held the record for most points in a game for Melbourne? Some thinking music for Gus. Then we'll come back and have a look at round 11. There's a few changes, a key one in particular for the first game, 6 o'clock game today on Friday.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
So Melbourne boast the man who has scored more points than anyone in Cameron Smith. Ryan Pappenhausen broke the record against the Tigers last week for most points in a game for the Storm with 36, who previously held the record and who is now second.
Gee, I don't know. I've got to think of goal kickers who scored tries. Goal kickers who scored tries for the Melbourne Storm. Matt Geyer.
Oh, go away.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, that would have been a career best for Matt Geyer.
That's your best ever. Well done. What a get. I looked at the rundown briefly and thought I read Mark Geyer, but no, it's his brother Matt Geyer.
Matt Geyer.
34 points in a game versus Western Suburbs in 1999.
How many tries did he score?
4 tries.
Four
Thank you,
tries.
Jordan.
4 tries, 9 goals.
Well done. Good get. What a handy player, Matt Geyer.
Good player.
He played 5/8 in a grand final. Is that the grand final they won?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, it was the...
No, Scott Hill and Kamali in 99. He played...
No, I think Scott Hill was out, wasn't he?
Was he?
Did Matt Geyer not play 5/8 that day?
He may have.
Because he kicked the conversion that won them the game.
Teams. Matt Geyer.
There
you are. Yeah.
I first saw Matty Geyer play for Western Reds.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd seen a little bit of him as a junior, but I think when the Western Reds started, his big brother Mark Geyer signed with the Western Reds, and Matty must have gone with him. And I saw him playing, because every team had reserve grades back then too, and I saw him playing a lower grade game, and then he got a run on in the first grade game, and he was just complete enthusiasm. He played fullback. He was just complete enthusiasm. He was bull at a gate, but he was absolutely complete enthusiasm. And where was I at the time? I was at the Roosters, and I sort of recommend you should look at that Matty Geyer, and he was a completely different personality to his brother, like chalk and cheese.
He's very quiet, Blake, Matt Geyer,
Very
isn't he?
quiet, very quiet. Yeah.
Was he ever knocking around the Panthers when MG was there?
No.
They'd be similar ages, wouldn't they?
No, I think
No?
Matty's younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matty's younger. But he didn't, I don't think he didn't play NRL for Panthers.
No.
When Mark went to Western Reds, when would that have been? 95? It'd be 95. I think Matty must have gone with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you have it. Good get. And yes, he was the 5/8 in the grand final of 1999. Could you bring that back up, Jordan? Have a look at this St George team that got beat in one of the most dramatic grand finals ever. Luke Patton, Nathan Blacklock, Paul McGregor, Sean Timmins, Jamie Ainscough, Anthony Mundine, Trent Barrett. What a backline.
Well, it was shortly after the merger. See, Illawarra and St George.
And if there was their first year.
Yeah, Illawarra and St George merged, and there was no salary cap. So they just took the highest paid players from both sides.
Was there no salary cap in 99?
No, well, salary cap was abandoned during the Super League War because payments went out the window. And St George and it's how Melbourne was formed. Melbourne was formed through Western Reds, Hunter Mariners, Adelaide Rams, and whoever else they wanted to pinch from the club. So they had them all signed up, and it was a it was a phenomenal team too. It had come from all over the place, but
Lazarus, Swain, Howe, Marquette, Kearney, Nickow.
Tawira Nickow.
Yeah.
Tawira Nickow. Remember Tawira Nickow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the first year I coached the Bulldogs was 1988,
yeah.
right? So I was a young coach and got the job coaching Bulldogs. And I got a letter from a young kid in New Zealand who wrote to me, handwritten letter, right, saying that he was playing football in New Zealand. There wasn't a lot of coaching or pathways for him there. I've got the aspiration to be the New Zealand captain one day. I want to come to Australia and learn how to play rugby league. Would you give me a chance to come to the Bulldogs? I've always followed the Bulldogs. I'd like to come over and play. It was Tawira Nickow.
Wow.
And I took the letter to Peter Moore because I'd never been in this sort of position before. I took it to Bullfrog Moore. I said, I got a letter from there. He said, matey, he said, the one you don't get's the one you miss. He said, why don't we give him a shot?
Wow.
So I wrote back to the kid. You got to write back to him. There's no phones or anything in that. I wrote back to him. I said, look, there's an opportunity for you. If you give us your details, we'll buy you a ticket and you can come across.
Wow.
And I went to pick him up at the airport. I will never forget this day.
Wow.
I will never forget this day.
Yeah.
I've gone to Sydney Airport. I've never seen this kid. I don't know what he looks like or what have you. And I'm sort of waiting there at the arrivals. And out the door came this kid pushing a shopping trolley, like a trolley with his bags on it. And all his worldly possessions were on this trolley. Whatever he owned was there on this trolley, right? And he had this loping stride about him. And he had the big mullet, long mullet at the back and the short cut in front. And he was just big and tall and gangly. And he walked out, but he had this loping sort of action. If you've ever seen a thoroughbred parading before a race, and he walked out, and I looked at him, and I said, gee, I hope that's him. And he obviously recognised me, and he smiled and started to walk towards me. I said, if he can't play, I said, they've got to throw the book away. And he walked over. He was a lovely big kid. He had big hands, Anyway, he knew nothing about rugby league. Like, he came and trained with us that summer, and we called him T because there were no Pacific Island players. There were no sort of players with names like that in our competition at the time. So none of us could pronounce his name. We said, what do we call you? He said, T. Just call me T. So we called him T. T won everything. He won every run, whether it was 50 metres or 5 miles or whatever it was. And he trained himself into the ground. He played some reserve grade that year. He was really raw, but he had a heart and a constitution like you could never see. He was actually an inspiration to everyone, and he just came across and trained himself and trained himself and trained himself. And he went back to New Zealand, and, of course, history shows that what a great player he turned out to be. I caught up with him again at Brisbane Airport after a test match, and he was now, after he left Melbourne, he went to the Sharks, or after the Sharks, he went to Melbourne.
He played 10. I didn't even realise he played for Canterbury. He played 10 first grade games between 88 and 90.
Yeah.
So he would have played first grade in 88.
Yeah. I don't think he played in 88. Did he debut? Oh, he might have
that.
He might have debuted in 88. I might have given him a debut in 88.
Wow.
Yeah. But he turned out to be a wonderful player. Played for the Sharks, played for Melbourne. They won that premiership. Very, very nearly got him to the Roosters, but he got a big offer to go somewhere else, and we just couldn't afford it.
He went to England.
Yeah, went to England, star across there, star at the representative level. I'll never forget that day, him getting off the plane at Sydney Airport, and just the way he moved was like, sometimes when you look at a racehorse, you go, wow. And he was just, I said, well, if he can't play, they ought to throw the book away.
Wow, that's a great story. So a handwritten letter arrives and the bloke gets a chance. Isn't that
Handwritten
incredible?
letter, and I had to write back to him a handwritten letter.
Did you talk to anyone in New Zealand?
I think he would have been 18 or 19 at the time. No, well, there was no phones. There was no, we didn't know anyone. And it was kind of like, we'll give him an opportunity to come across and play in the under-20s. And he trained with the first grade squad that year, and he worked. He had that horrible accident, obviously, after his football career.
Terrible.
He's been an inspiration to so many people, but I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the letter. I'll never forget Bullfrog saying, yeah, let's give him a shot. And I'll never forget picking him up at the airport. I'll never forget it. And in his bag, when he opened his bag when we got to his accommodation, he had a fry pan. He brought everything he owned. He had a fry pan. So
that was in case he wanted to hit you over the head.
So he was coming with his cooking utensils and everything. He was
cooking utensils.
He was holeless bowless.
Like he's going camping.
He was all in.
Isn't that great?
He was all in.
Oh, that's gold.
He brought everything he owned on the plane.
Oh, how funny.
He was coming across to make a career in rugby league. And
I can't imagine there's too many frying pans that get through customs these days.
well, it would have been in the big bag.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What a good yarn. There you have it. I love our little random reflections. Shall we talk about round 11?
Yeah, let's talk about round 10 first. I got none.
Yeah, I got 1.5.
I got none. Well, I got a half, but
Did you get none?
I got none.
I tipped against you. I went against you for a dolphin to beat eel,
Yeah.
and that turned out to be my only win for the round.
Well, I got none, and it could have been 5 or 6.
Yeah.
The way the round went. I mean, Eels led by 12 against the Dolphin and got run down. Knights, what did they lead? 20-0.
20-0.
And got run down. We tipped the Knights. The Broncos led 14-0 at half time. There was no reason to tip South in that game. Raider Bulldog. And then we tipped the Dragons and they were unlucky. They just handled it badly. I thought they should have nearly won that game. That would have been a big upset, and we tipped that one. 15-14 they were beaten. Then, of course...
The Dragons trailed 14-0.
Yeah, but, they could have easily...
And got it back to 14-0.
Got to go back to 14-0. Panthers led by 12 twice in that game.
They're going to win by 40.
I did say that the Tigers were a real good chance of beating Melbourne. They got to be 64-0.
Slightly off the mark on that one.
64-0. 64-0. And I gave the other team a chance. 64-0. Then on Sunday we tipped Manly, and it got back to 14-all, and I thought, well, they're just going to go on and win this. And then they lost their way, and Sharks were too good. So, it was one of them weekends. So the only one I can say I got right was probably Bulldog, but we don't tip in those games. So
What about the bludger of the first half in the Manly Sharks game? How bad was that?
Well, we saw some brilliant football. We saw some terrible football too.
All right, I'm confident you can turn it around for round 11.
Some teams, when they play each other, they're always great games, and some teams, when they play each other, they're not so great. The styles just don't mesh.
No.
That was a tough watch.
That was a shocker.
Yeah. Who was the game we did that day? We did the 8 the other day. And I said, the end of the game. So it was a
Was that at Allianz?
It was a bludger of a game.
What game was that?
Some teams match up good, and some teams match up for very uninspiring games.
Manly were hopeless and still got it back to 14-all.
Yeah.
All right.
And it didn't look like the Shark was going to go on with it.
No, the Shark were very unconvincing. So, well, I'm confident you can turn it around, but my goodness, there's some flip of the coin games this weekend, none more so than this one. Newcastle versus Para, the early game this afternoon. I can't wait to watch this one. So the Knights, after they got it back on track at Magic Round, they threw the toys out of the cot against the Titans. And Tyson Gamble has come into the team at halfback because Jack Cogger has made way. So he sacked the halfback again.
They keep changing all that, don't they?
Jack Hetherington's 18th man but could play. Leo Thompson is out because of... I've tipped Newcastle. I need to change. Leo Thompson's out. So Frizzell goes to the front row, but it is the 300th NRL game for Dane Gagai, and Zach Lomax comes back in to the Parramatta team, which is missing Bailey Simonson because of a foot injury. See, it's Friday. We normally do this on a Wednesday. I've got to put my tips in Wednesday, and I want to change.
Why?
I want to change from Newcastle to Para.
Well, Newcastle are favourites in the betting.
$1.80 against $2 on the tab.
And I would imagine that's only because of the home ground situation. I think Eel is going better. I think Parramatta are actually going better, and I could trust them a little bit more. I just don't know what's going on with the Knights. You know, you kind of thought, well, maybe they're bouncing back to form a little bit. But the way they gave it up so meekly and surrendered that lead was pretty ordinary against a team that were totally out of form in the Titans. We know the Titans are brilliant, and they can be brilliant, but that was a bad loss. I'm going to tip Eel away from home there.
Well, why did he sack the halfback again?
Well, it's become quite a habit.
It's
up
like
there.
musical halfbacks.
Well, I don't know how. Anyway.
I'm off to a call later this evening to call the Bulldogs and the Roosters. This is going to be an absolute cracker. Harry Hayes gets to start for the first time this season for Jamin Salmon, who unfortunately is out for a long time with that ankle. And young Luke Smith's going to make a debut. Another one of those emotional videos online, Gus, where he rings his dad and they all start crying.
Country
I
boy.
can't stop crying when I watch those.
Country boy, good stock. His family came down for the jersey presentation last night. It's the real positive this week. Obviously, the Bulldogs have got a lot of players unavailable. I think there's 7 or 8 NRL players unavailable, but the younger fellas from the pathways keep stepping up. And Luke Smith was a captain of a Jersey flag winning premiership team, and a few of his mates have gone up to first grade and done well in Jack Todd and Harry Hayes, and they're welcoming him in tonight. He's a good kid, good country kid, good hard country kid, and he's got his family down for the weekend, so he'll do well. I hope he goes well.
Okay, good. He's a back rower, yeah?
He's a back rower centre. He can play, virtually anywhere, really. You throw him in anywhere. You can throw him at hooker, you can throw him in the middle, doesn't matter. But he'll probably start on the edge, or not start on the edge, but he'll come off the bench on the edge at some stage tonight. Okay,
for the Roosters, Lindsay Collins has a game back to prove his fitness for Origin. Hasn't played since he suffered a knee injury in round 5. So back into the team. Valuable inclusion for the Roosters. I reckon it'll be tight tonight. It's going to be a good game. You can watch it on 9 from 7:30. Dolphins versus Warriors. Suncorp Stadium. Did I say the Tigers are playing the Dolphins? They're not playing the Dolphins. Who are the Tigers playing again? Rabbitohs. Yes, very interesting game, this one. No changes to the Dolphins squad that held on to beat Para. Daniel Safidi, Max Plath and Jeremy Marshall-King are still out. James Fisher-Harris returns for the Warriors, though, and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is on the extended bench and has a chance to return from a hamstring injury. So this is 3 o'clock tomorrow at Suncorp. Gee, Luke Metcalf's having a season.
A good kid,
yeah.
Good player. He played in junior reps at Sharks,
yes.
Luke Metcalf, and he played in the same team as Jamin Salmon. He played in the same team as Bronson Jerry.
And your son.
And my son, but they've all gone on to play NRL football. And Luke was a half, and he's been a slow boil, slow development, but he's sort of coming into that age now where he's found his feet and he's playing extremely well. And I think the Warriors are playing extremely well. I mean, I know they only won 15-14 last week, but it was away from home in Wollongong. St George gave them enough excuses to lose if they wanted them, but they refused to. And talking to people within the game, there is a lot of respect for the Warriors at the moment and a lot of respect for their tenacity and their defence, and they're probably just going a little bit the better. Dolphins are capable of anything on their day, and they'll have some players there looking to impress for Origin selection, but I'm going to go with the Warrior.
Indeed. Okay, Warriors to win. What was I going to point out there? Ah, yes. So they're second on the ladder. They've lost once since Vegas. That's a great record. 5:30 Saturday from Queensland Country Bank Stadium. The Cowboys, who can score points for fun but don't always stop them, up against Manly, a chastened Manly Sea Eagles. Big change at the Cowboys with Jackson Purdue from centre to 5/8 Gus. Tom Dearden goes to halfback. Jake Clifford's been dropped.
Yep.
Zach Labert comes into the centres and will play his first match in the NRL since suffering an ACL tear in round 5 last year. For Manly, Matt Lodge has played 2 games of the New South Wales Cup and is on the reserves, and they think he might come in. Jake goes back to lock. Jazz Tavanga goes to hooker, which moves Simpkin to the bench. And Ethan Bullimore is going to start the game at prop. So I'd imagine Lodge might come into that team somewhere. But Cowboys blistering with the ball, and that's a big change, isn't it? The youngster, who's super impressive.
Well, he's grown up being a half 5'8". That's what he's grown up doing. Like a lot of young fellas, they'll make their first grade debut in a different position, and they lost Valentine Holmes last year, and he did such a good job of it. They've kept him there, waiting for a replacement. Now, Zach Labert has obviously been out with that injury. He now makes himself available, which gives them the opportunity to go to what they believe are their long-term halves combination, which is Purdue and Dearden. And between Purdue, Dearden and Drinkwater, you've got 3 tremendously creative players. They're a very, very dangerous attacking team, the Cowboys. We've seen that so often, but they do concede a lot of points too. And if you concede a lot of points, then this Manly team can accommodate you. There is nothing to like about Manly's performance last week. It was a little bit deflating, I thought. I thought they were very unimpressive, but we know what they're capable of on their day. I've got recollections of these two teams playing out a very high-scoring game up in Townsville last year. When you talk about combinations of teams, sometimes there are two teams when they play each other, they produce dud games. This won't be a dud game. This will be high-flying and plenty of points and what have you. I'm going to go with Manly to bounce back. Now, that's just a gut feel. That's just a gut feel. I think Manly...
In Townsville?
In Townsville, yeah.
Okay.
I think they'll be quite embarrassed about what happens last week. I think Tom Trbojevic will be out to prove his fitness. Cherry Evans won't want another game like that on his resume heading into Origin. They've got very, very dangerous out wide where Cowboys can be vulnerable. I mean, you look at Garrick and Cooler and Saab and Trbojevic and Hopewadi and Luke Brooks and Cherry Evans feeding them. They're so dangerous. If their forwards can do the job, they're vulnerable out there, the Cowboys. The Cowboys might score 30, but I can see Eagles at least with 5 or 6 tries in their afternoon's work.
Good old-fashioned shootout, eh?
It will be. I think it'll just be an absolute shootout. I think it'll be survival of the fittest in the end. I think Manly will bounce back.
Oh, okay. Manly to win for Gus. We'll go through all the odds for this when we do his recap at the end. Cronulla versus Melbourne, the old foes coming together. 7:30 Saturday night down in the Shire. Teague Wilton's going to play, returning from a shoulder injury after being listed in the reserves, but Tom Hazelton has a sternum problem, so he's going to miss the game. And Harry Grant has been named in 21, and it would appear that he's going to come back. But they've dropped Nelson again. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Kamikamitha in, Nelson out.
Yeah, there has to be a reason, doesn't there? Look, the Sharks are a little bit confusing at the moment, aren't they? There's so much talent there, and but we haven't really seen the best of them. We might see it here in this one as we head into the Origin period. But, gee whiz, Melbourne. I'll go Storm.
Yeah. 2 o'clock Sunday, the Broncos host the Dragons. Ezra Mam is in after a pretty dominant performance with his resumption in the Queensland Cup last week. Ben Hunt, we know, is going to miss 6 weeks and miss the first couple of Origins at least. And one other change to the team that fell to Souths in spectacular fashion with Xavier Willison named in the back row and Brendan Piakura on the bench. Now for the Dragons, Toby Couchman has a shoulder injury, so Jack DeBellin comes into the starting team. Blake Laurie is the new face on the bench. Dylan Egan's been named in the back row and Luciano Leilua on the bench. They've been swapping on game day, but it looks like Dylan Egan's going to be their starting back rower of choice going forward. 2 o'clock Sunday at Suncorp Stadium.
Yes.
You're confused by the Sharks, as we all are. I'm equally as confused by the Dragons.
Yeah, well, the Dragons have had a number of narrow losses this year. Their game management is not good. They've what have they been beaten in 3 1-point games, or and they've had some other games there where I thought they really blew it at different stages. And then they have days where they just concede a lot of points where it goes against them. They've potentially got the side to trouble the Broncos here. I don't know how well the Broncos are actually going. Whether they lost 4 of their last 5.
Yep.
They really had 30 good minutes against the Bulldogs, and the rest of that game, they wasn't that crash hot either. So it's hard to know where they're at. Ezra Mann, I guess, all eyes will be on him, just how much he's had 1 game back in the Queensland Cup. He's too good for Queensland Cup, but I can't attest to his fitness.
This might sound odd. I'm not sure the Broncos are going much better than they were last year.
Well, statistically, they're not. Statistically, they're pretty much identical. Yeah. So, yeah.
But everyone's running around saying that they can win the comp. They haven't proven anything yet.
Well, they do that. They say that on talent. But they say they can win the comp because they've got talent.
Of course.
And when you go through all the rosters in the competition,
what's out of the Gold Coast?
If you want to, well, that's there's a I don't want to get too technical, but there's a saying in professional sports: system versus talent. System beats talent. Right. It's all right to have the talent, but you also need the system. There are a lot of other factors that go into winning professional sport of any nature other than just talent. we can all see talent, but not everyone sees systems and connectivity and all those sort of other things that you've got to work on. And the Broncos, that's where they fall down a little bit, unfortunately. Their talent could come out and blow the Dragon away and not surprise anyone. System, if the Dragons, can scratch them where they're itch and can control the ball and control where the Broncos get the ball, then they can wear them down. I mean, there's an understrength South Sydney team the other night, came from 14-0 down.
It didn't look like scoring in the first half.
Never looked like it. But they came from behind to beat them. I mean, that doesn't look good on your resume if you want to be title contenders. They're not in that sort of form. Talent, they've got talent. I mean, if every one of those players came on the open market, there'd be clubs knocking themselves down to buy every one of them. No risk in the world.
Absolutely.
I'll go with talent, but nothing would surprise me there. Bronco.
I'm just sending a text. Change my tip tonight to Eels. There's the mock. Sunday footy, 4 o'clock down in Canberra.
Should never do that. So if you go to the tab and have a bet and you put it on the wrong number, never change the ticket. That's an old rule.
Yeah, I've seen.
You should never change your tip.
I've seen blokes accidentally back horses at 50 and 60 to 1 that win.
Yeah, well, it happens. Never change your ticket.
I've just changed it.
You've just changed your tip.
Changed to para.
Well, you're going to be so sick tonight when the Newcastle wins.
Well, it doesn't really matter. It's only tipping. But I'm behind Mido by a couple of points in the 9 comp, and I'm leading the 2GB competition.
No, you're really.
So I'm taking it a little bit seriously.
Okay.
Even though 1 from 8 last week didn't really reflect that. The Raiders up against the Titans down in Canberra. Zach Hosking goes to the second row for poor Matty Nicholson, the Englishman, who's been terrific. But he's had surgery and he's out for 12 weeks. Corey Horsburgh comes back from a head knock. Raiders have won 10 of their last 11 against the Gold Coast, who have Kieran Foran back in number 14.
Well, I said of the Titans last week, I think they've got the talent to beat anyone, but we couldn't tip them until they started to show some winning form. They were down 20-0 at halftime against Newcastle. I thought, well, today's not going to be the day. Then all of a sudden they sprung to life and produced the points and they won running away. Can they go to Canberra and repeat that? Well, yeah, on talent they can. Looking at the two, Titans, they've got a chance. But, the Raiders...
Talent versus system, Gus.
Yeah, I think Raider at home should be too strong.
Geez, Ricky would have been exasperated last week. Oh. And then Sunday night at Campbelltown, the Tigers against South. So we leave the game that is the head scratcher for last, don't we? So Stafford Toa could come back for the West Tigers. Charlie Stain stays in the team on the wing. Brent Naden goes to the bench. They're going to miss Fanua Polek. They get Royce Hunt into the starting team. Why don't we drop Jack Bird last week?
Can't answer you.
No. And then Alex Johnston comes back from a hamstring injury to continue his pursuit of Ken Irvine's try-scoring record for Souths. He's on 196 tries. He's 16 behind.
Yep.
Can you unscramble this one for us?
No, I can't. I don't think there's much between them. I'm going to go with the old coach and Latrell.
All right.
Probably pull something out to win.
So let me give you the betting odds as you go through here. Newcastle $1.80, Parramatta $2.
I'm going with Eel.
Bulldog $1.44, Rooster $2.80. Saturday 3 p.m. tomorrow. Dolphins $1.95, Warriors $1.85.
I'm going to go with Warrior.
Cowboys $1.74, Manly $2.10.
I'm going to go with Sea Eagle.
Sharks are $2.50, Storm are $1.50.
Storm.
Broncos $1.30, Dragons $3.50.
Bronco.
Same odds for Canberra Titans $1.30, $3.50.
Raider.
And you can actually toss the coin because the Tigers and the Rabbits are $1.90 each of 2.
I'm going with Bennett.
All right. Let's hope we bounce back. Another great weekend.
It's a long race, mate.
Yes. And then we'll know the Origin teams and be able to have a chat about it next Wednesday in 6 Tackles with Gus. Have a great weekend. Good luck to the Dogs tonight. You can watch it on 9 from 7:30 from McCaw Stadium. Look forward to your company next week.